Hello there, I'm Heidi Adams in for Esther Gitui Hewitt. It is Wednesday, July 13th, and this is Africa 54.
A former top Rwandan official is found guilty of a role in the 1994 genocide. We'll have details. Kenyan university students begin a nationwide peace and voting campaign ahead of the August 9th election. And how Uganda is facing the challenges of home care.
A 7-member committee charged by the Ethiopian government to look into possible peace negotiations with Tigrayan rebels has held its first meeting. That's according to a top aide to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The group, headed by Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen, started its work on Tuesday and decided on its internal workings and the ethics for the discussion, which is to be led by the African Union, according to Redwan Hussein, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's national security advisor. While Ethiopia's civil war has not reached Addis Ababa, rights groups say authorities arbitrarily detained thousands of Tigrayans last year in ethnically motivated arrests. VOA spoke to recently released Tigrayans about the conditions they endured. Henry Wilkins reports from Addis Ababa.
Ethiopia's Addis Ababa appears as a modern international city with the African Union headquarters, prompting some to call it the continent's diplomatic capital. But rights groups say tensions are boiling beneath the surface from Ethiopia's war with Tigrayan forces that saw thousands of Tigrayans last year arbitrarily arrested and abused after the government claimed some Tigrayans in the capital of being undercover agents. VOA spoke to a Tigrayan man, his identity hidden for safety, who said he was released in February after being jailed in the capital for 3 months in a makeshift prison.
The police might have mood swings that you might get kicked. There are a lot of ways we were kicked. I personally also was kicked one day for doing nothing. I did nothing. I was about to take a shower. Guys who were kicked a lot of times. They only need a reason to kick you.
Rights groups like Amnesty International say ethnically motivated detentions increased days after the government declared a state of emergency in early November following threats by Tigrayan forces to attack the city. Samur, who declined to give his full name, says he fled to Uganda in March after being held for nearly 3 months in a prison in Addis Ababa.
Astonishing, to learn that there were kids with us there. I specifically remember this kid. He was in grade 7. He barely began high school, and he wasn't even born in Tigray. His father is a Tigrayan, and his mother is not even Tigrayan.
In May, the death in custody of a Tigrayan general and a former commander in the African Union mission in Somalia, General Gebremeddin Fikadu, sparked protests in the capital. Reuters reported in June at least 15,000 Tigrayans were detained between November and February, and that 17 died in custody, some after being taken from the capital to a prison in the town of Mizan Teferi. VOA spoke to another Tigrayan man, his identity also hidden, who recalls the state of inmates transferred from the Mizan Teferi prison to his prison.
5 prisoners had to share 1 loaf of bread and 2 liters of water for 3 days. That means 1 glass of water per person per day. All were in terrible condition. They were very hungry and thirsty.
VOA could not independently verify the reported deaths and allegations of abuse while in custody. The state-funded human rights organisation, Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, claims all Tigrayans held arbitrarily in the capital have been released.
All the arrests, mass arrests, and that happened during that period are connected in relation, in particular, to the state of emergency. have ceased since the lifting of the state of emergency around February. Yes, to our knowledge, all the people have been released.
Ethiopia lifted its 6-month state of emergency in February, but the Commission in late June confirmed reports that 9,000 Tigrayans are still being held in the town of Samara and called for their immediate release. Ethiopia's government did not respond to VOA's request for comment, but has in the past denied any ethnically motivated arrests or abuse of Tigrayans. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Former senior Rwandan official Laurent Buchibaruta was sentenced by the Court of Appeal of Paris to 20 years in prison for complicity in genocide. This comes more than 28 years after the massacre of Tutsis in Rwanda. Vincent Makori has more.
Laurent Buchibaruta is the highest-ranking Rwandan official to have faced trial in France over the 1994 massacres. An estimated 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus died in 100 days of mass killings. At the heart of the case against the 78-year-old was several security meetings, either ordered or attended by Buchibaruta, which prosecutors had argued were actually planning sessions for the killings. The former prefect of the southern province of Gikongoro was accused of having persuaded thousands of people to take refuge in the Murambi Technical School by promising them food, water and protection. The court also examined Buchibaruta's responsibility in the massacre of around 90 Tutsi students at the Mari Mercy School in Kibeho on May 7, 1994, and in the execution of Tutsi prisoners, including 3 priests in Gikongoro prison.
It is a shock. At the same time, he was convicted of complicity in genocide. So I'm not going to beat about the bush. Just a thought for all the victims, for all the survivors we have heard in court these past weeks, who have come to lay down their burden, who have come to lay down their suffering, who have come to tell Mr. Buchibaruta what they have endured.
For us, there is a certain disappointment because he's not convicted of genocide as a perpetrator of genocide for any of the facts for which he was tried. So he is convicted for complicity in genocide. My thoughts are especially for all the victims of the church in Kibeho, for whom he was not held responsible.
The most important thing in reality is that the trial took place. The man who embodied the power in his prefecture was obligated, even if it took 28 years, to come answer questions, to explain himself in front of the victims, in the presence of survivors, and to listen to the survivors' accounts. As is often the case in a trial, it is the meeting of the victim's word and the suspect's words, and that was the most important thing. After the sentence for us is really secondary for the victims.
During his trial, Buchibaruta denied any involvement in the killings. A Rwanda Genocide survivors group said Wednesday it welcomed the jailing of Buchibaruta. The trial involved more than 100 witness statements, including some from survivors from Rwanda, either in person or by video conference. France has long been under pressure from activists to act against suspected Rwandan perpetrators who took refuge in French soil afterwards. Vincent Makori, VOA News.
Well, for more now on this high-profile case and the verdict, I'm joined by Catherine Field. She joins us via Skype from Paris. Catherine, welcome to Africa 54. Some have expressed disappointment, of course, we heard there, that Buchibaruta is going away, of course, for complicity in genocide and not for genocide itself. What does it mean for those who have, for so long, 28 years now, sought justice? Are some telling you this is a case of better than nothing?
I'm afraid it is for a lot of people. They got their day in court. They had the man who was accused while he was prefect or governor of the Gikongoro prefecture, that he withheld any sort of responsibility which he should have had for keeping the people of that prefecture safe. So on the one hand, they are saying, yes, he was in court, we got to have our say, it isn't what we wanted, but the fact was that more than 100 witnesses came forward, and there were some absolutely horrific, heart-rending witness statements that even though it's 28 years since those massacres happened, to hear again what happened in Chanika being said, it was as cathartic for the witnesses, for the survivors, as it was horrific for those of us in court to hear it. So, yes, people wish that he could have been held responsible for genocide, but the court just heard that he had incited genocide, and they also heard that he held meetings at which he perhaps incited others to commit acts of violence against the Tutsis in his area of Rwanda.
Catherine, this is such a high-profile case of a very high-profile man, and the saddest part is probably the passage of time here. Why has it taken so long to bring Laurent Gbagbo to justice?
You're quite right. He's been living in France, in east of Paris, since 1997. There really wasn't the political will for a long time from the French government to bring these people to court. But Rwanda survivors' rights groups here kept pushing and pushing. There were several changes of government. And in fact, the final push really did come when the new French president, Emmanuel Macron, took office just over 5 years ago and said he wanted to turn a page. He wanted to improve relations with Rwanda. He specifically said, though, that France bears a responsibility for these massacres, but it was not an accomplice. So it was really that impetus from a new president, a new political class, that finally brought some of these more high-profile cases to court.
And as you told us earlier, there are many, many more cases, upwards of like dozens more cases that we may see come to court. We've run out of time here, Catherine, but thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your reporting. That is Catherine Field. She is a Paris-based journalist, and she joins us from France. Ivory Coast is calling on Mali to release 49 of its soldiers they say are being unjustly detained at Bamako airport and accused by officials there of being mercenaries. None of the detained Ivorian soldiers were carrying weapons of war. That's according to a statement from the Ivorian president's office.
According to the first factual elements given by the state of Mali, the idea of mercenarism is tenable. But at the same time, when you also consider societal aspects, the idea of old habits remains tenable as a hypothesis. That those are people who have always been deployed without the state of Mali being informed. In some ways, this raises questions about the responsibility of successive governments in Mali since the Malian crisis to the present day with regard to foreign actors, especially military ones. The second hypothesis, which is also to be taken into account at this stage, is that the military elite in power would seek not only to have effective control,
Mali says its foreign ministry was not informed through official channels, denouncing a, quote, flagrant violation of the penal code relating to territorial integrity. Moving to Southern Africa now, officials in South Africa say they have arrested the owner of a bar where 21 teenagers mysteriously died following an investigation that they say focused on the supplying of alcohol to minors. David Doyle has more.
The owner of a South African bar where 21 teenagers mysteriously died last month has been arrested, police said on Wednesday. The 52-year-old facing charges after an investigation that focused on the alleged supplying of alcohol to minors. Forensic teams are yet to reveal their conclusions on how the teens died at a tavern in the coastal city, East London. A source close to the investigation says one theory was a chemical or gas leak. Authorities are also investigating the possibility of accidental poisoning. The deaths in the Scenery Park township have triggered an outpouring of grief in a nation used to seeing casualties from a pervasive drinking culture. Angry mourners have complained that weeks of calls to shut the tavern down went unheeded. Provincial police said in a statement that the bar's owner was arrested over the weekend. 2 employees were subsequently arrested on Tuesday. The owner is expected to appear before East London Magistrates Court on August 19th.
And that was David Doyle of Reuters who filed that report. A nationwide peace and voting campaign is underway by Kenyan university students ahead of the August 9th presidential election. Victoria Amunga is in Nairobi for us and filed this report.
Scenes such as these have marred Kenya's past elections, the worst in 2007-2008, when over 1,000 people were killed. Kenya has a history of election-related violence and a lack of accountability for human rights abuse, according to Human Rights Watch. A survey by a Government Unity Commission, Kenya National Cohesion and Integration Commission, shows 6 counties are likely to experience electoral violence. As the next election approaches on August 9th, university students are teaming up to campaign against election violence among their peers through a new peace association.
The same students who have been trained as master campus trainers on voter education are the same people who are leading in terms of championing for peace. So just recently we launched the 47 days of peace, and this one we launched it specifically when we had remained 47 days to the general election. So on a daily basis, we are having peace walk.
And listen, as I raise my voice of hope for peace.
Peace advocates say young people are most vulnerable to exploitation and manipulation to engage in violence, according to Global Peace Foundation. That is especially because so many are unemployed. National government figures show that some 5 million Kenyan youth are out of work.
They are available for recruitment into extremism, and politicians, mainly target these young people because they're the people who, can be misused for as little as 100 shillings.
100 shillings is an equivalent to nearly $1.50 in Kenya. In a peace drive dubbed Nitatenda Wajibu Wangu, meaning I'll do my part in Swahili, students from 75 universities and colleges are committing to casting their vote and encouraging others to do so, including on social media.
If you decide not to go and vote, if you have a vote, you're trying to tell someone else to govern your life and you have given it to them. So the bigger picture is if also you participate in causing violence and not voting, and we don't have classes, we don't have schools, our careers stop, you're going to be affected in one way or another.
The August poll will be Kenya's 3rd election under its new constitution that was promulgated in 2010, and the nationwide Youth Peace Initiative members hope for a calm transition. Victoria Amunga, VOA Africa News Center, Nairobi.
Well, still to come here on Africa 54, we'll bring you an update on some innovative home healthcare in Uganda. You don't want to miss this. Stay with us. On the next Straight Talk Africa, as British Prime Minister Boris Johnson prepares to leave office soon, what does his departure mean for UK-Africa relations? On Johnson's watch, 2 African countries joined the British Commonwealth of Nations, even as he faced criticism over racist remarks, Brexit, and his controversial UK-Rwanda deportation policy. We'll look at Johnson's mixed record and legacy in Africa. We'll also discuss US-Africa trade relations as political and business leaders from Africa and the United States prepare to meet in Morocco for the US-Africa Business Summit. Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa. Let's take a look at some other headlines. 1 year after the crackdown on pro-democracy protests in Eswatini, activists say the monarchy government has escalated its pressure on dissenting voices. And Ethiopian Federal Police announced the arrest of National Disaster Risk Management Commissioner Mitiku Kasa on alleged corruption charges. In international news, U.S. President Joe Biden arrived in Israel on Wednesday as part of a broader Middle East visit with stops in the West Bank and Saudi Arabia. He is expected to push for Israel's deeper integration into the region and urge Gulf countries to pump more oil to alleviate the global energy crisis. John Kirby, Biden's National Security Council coordinator for strategic communications at the White House, spoke to VOA about Biden's Middle East visit.
There's so much that needs to be discussed on this trip, and the agenda is quite extensive. Between going to Israel and furthering our defense partnership and reaffirming our ironclad commitment to Israel's defense, to meeting with President Abbas, and to reaffirming our commitment to a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. And then, of course, in Saudi Arabia, where we'll have bilateral discussions with King Salman and his leadership team. Again, this is a strategic partner for 80 years. The Saudi pilots flew with American pilots as they went after ISIS targets in 2014. Saudi sailors still today are sailing with American sailors in the Persian Gulf, trying to minimize the Iranians' destabilizing activities there in the maritime environment. They're a strategic partner, and there's a lot to talk about, whether it's counterterrorism, whether certainly it's about the Iranian threat, or the war in Yemen. Now we're on our second extension of a truce in Yemen. Thousands of Yemenis now lives have been saved because that war has stopped for the longest period of time in 7 years. So that's significant. And then, of course, on his last day, he'll be sitting down with 9 other leaders in the context of the Gulf Cooperation Council. And my goodness, there's a lot to talk about there. Again, counterterrorism and security, but also economic security, energy security, food security, and climate change. So there's an awful lot on the table for the president. He's very much looking forward to this trip.
Oh, John Kirby there speaking to VOA. He is President Biden's National Security Council coordinator for strategic communications at the White House. Well, it is time now for our tech segment, and joining us now is our technology reporter, Paul Ndiho. Hello there, Paul.
Hello, Heidi. As the worldwide population ages more, diseases and conditions require continuous home care service. In Uganda, home care is a major challenge. For more perspective, I'm joined by Barnabas Nkore, the CEO and founder of Vantage Care in Uganda.
Welcome to Africa 54.
I am very privileged to be on your show. I have seen you interview so many big people, and for me to be on your show is really...
You are one of those big people, my friend. You're trying to transform quality care, health care in Uganda. You've put your money on the line, trying to take those services back to Uganda. Bring me up to speed. What is it that you've been able to do this far?
We named it Empowering Home Care after seeing that what we do, what our aging population needs in Uganda is really craving and hungry for services that are needed to keep them cared for with a sense of integrity. Our aging population is left isolated, kind of neglected, and there are things that that could be solved if they were taken care of. You know, there's so many frequent hospitalizations with the elderly for wounds that would prevent sicknesses. My mother is 81 years now. My mother lives in the village. She has elder age chronic diseases, which is blood pressure, diabetes. She forgets because she's aging, and sometimes they don't know the art of hygiene. So looking at my mother, she's non-compliant with blood pressure medications. So she gets to the hospital when her blood pressure is very high and uncontrollable. So these are some of the things that if someone really with basic training knew how to manage an old person at home like this, we would avoid hospitalization.
You gave a very telling story about your mother, and there are a lot of people who share the same view. What can Vantage Care do for them to help their parents?
We focus on preventive and safety. We rehabilitate patients who have lost the use of their arms. Think of a stroke person. You know, people recover from stroke, and people who don't get rehabilitation, they die. I mean, you have someone at home who can't feed themselves. We know how to make the texture of the food that someone can swallow very well without choking. Repositioning a patient who has a stroke, so prevent skin breakdown. Help people walk safely with someone who knows which side to use when ambulating someone who has one side weakness. Hygiene, you know, some of these people they stay in their rooms and because they are afraid to be, they feel they have lost control of their urine and the feces, the bowels. So knowing that I have someone who can clean me anytime I get an accident, then I come back into the community. Someone is actually asking me, do you need a glass of juice? Do you need a snack? Can we take a walk? This is personalized care. I mean, how can you beat that?
You're trying to basically transfer technology to Uganda. You're buying equipment here and ship to Uganda. From a logistical point of view, how easy is that?
We have been trying to gather a number of equipment, and thank God we were able also to get accepted to bring in donations to the elder people who need semi-hospital beds, wheelchairs, walkers, canes.
As an experienced medical personnel here in the United States, the type of training that you undergo to become certified or professional at what you do, what kind of training are you offering to Ugandans who want to do this job?
Home care is very critical. It's basic, offering basic services, but it's very essential and very vital. We really focus on kindness, empathy, compassion, and treating people with a sense of integrity. We teach how to communicate, the art of communication, you know, body language, verbal, and also like what should they really report to the family members, loved ones. Safe transfers from bed to chair, from chair to bed to different places. So we don't have our clients' skin breakdowns or skin tears.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you again.
Inspired by a loved one. Thank you so much, Paul, for that report. Moving to South Asia now, there was chaos on the nation of Sri Lanka Wednesday. As protesters stormed the Prime Minister's office in Colombo, police fired tear gas shells and dozens of demonstrators scaled the walls and broke through barriers to enter the building. This all came hours after the embattled president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, fled the country, forced out by a popular uprising that has targeted the top leadership over the country's dire economic crisis. Rajapaksa departed for the Maldives just before dawn on a military aircraft with his wife 4 days after he went into hiding. His exit effectively ends the rule of the powerful Rajapaksa political dynasty that had a grip on power in Sri Lanka for nearly 2 decades. And that is our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching. Do take care. Goodbye.